So we have some breaking news that Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have announced who's going to be on their joint policy task forces. If you recall, when Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign and endorsed Joe Biden, one of the agreements would be that Biden and Sanders would craft a series of task forces to discuss crucial policy on the environment, on the economy, and many other issues. And we now have a list of who's going to be on those task forces from the Biden side and from the Bernie side. And I have to say that while there's a lot of good names from the Bernie side on these task forces, I am deeply skeptical of the value these are going to have for progressives. Look, you can see that AOC is co-chairing the Environment Committee, and you can see that Pramila Jayapal is co-chairing the Healthcare Committee. Those are solid folks, and that's a good thing to see. But at the end of the day, I can't help but feel this is going to be more for the political benefit of Joe Biden than it is the actual policy benefit of progressives. If you read this tweet by Holly Otterbein, who's been covering the Bernie Sanders campaign and the left via the media, she says that among the items Sanders allies will likely be pushing for on that task force, lowering the Medicare eligibility age to 55 and creating a universal healthcare insurance program for children. But as David Dole from the Rational National notes, what's the point of Bernie's allies being on the task force if they'll just be fighting for Hillary Clinton's platform? And David makes a crucial point that in some ways the Joe Biden platform is less ambitious than Hillary's platform. Hillary, for instance, wanted Medicare for all 55 and older. Biden currently has it at 60 and older. So really, you're going to ask AOC and other progressives to just push that back to where Hillary was in 2016. That's not good enough. That's not meaningfully including progressives on your policy task force. That's basically asking AOC, one of the more left-leaning Democrats in the House of Representatives, to represent Hillary Clinton's policy. Why don't you just throw Hillary Clinton on the task force and demand that Hillary Clinton fight for what Hillary Clinton ran on? It's awfully sad that Hillary Clinton has a better policy, at least in some ways, on healthcare than Joe Biden after 4 years and all we've learned. And having progressives on the task force, I think, will only serve to legitimize what eventually comes out. I know AOC has talked about these sorts of things. I know AOC has noted that she's serving on this committee and she's cognizant of the fact that there are pitfalls to it. She's cognizant of the fact that this is going to be seen in a way as rubber stamping Joe Biden and his campaign, and that she thinks you have to kind of play both sides of the card. And there's an element of truth to that, but I can't help but feel that this is a brilliant move for Joe Biden from a political perspective and a rather weak one from Bernie Sanders. Look, I haven't said a lot of good things about Joe Biden from an actual campaigning perspective. I'm certainly not a fan, but it's been quite the coup for Joe Biden to basically get Bernie Sanders to cancel his campaign early, to basically endorse him outright without any concrete concessions, and then have Bernie Sanders movement people endorse Joe Biden via going on his task forces, which will have the eventual effect of having these people rubber stamp Joe Biden's policies basically as they are, or with very, very, very minor, in comparison to what should have been done, concessions. This is not a time to allow that to happen. And yet Biden is going to be able to say, unlike Hillary, that look, I've done so much to include Bernie, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, all of the left-wing Congress people. I've done more than any other candidate to bring in the left. And from an optics perspective, he might actually be right. He might actually be correct from an optics perspective, but the actual meat and potatoes policy will not be there. If you're going to have one of these task forces and you're going to meaningfully include Bernie and the gang, you need to have everything on the table. There needs to be a concrete push for Medicare for all. Not Medicare 55 and older, not Medicare 60 and older, not plans for children, but they lose their health care when they turn a certain age. Medicare for all. You might not get it, but that needs to be the fight. 100% that needs to be the fight. There can't be a progressive contingent going into these task forces already agreeing to Biden's general terrain. Because as we know, in this election, in this primary, Biden won. It's not over officially yet, but Biden clearly won the most votes, won the most delegates. Voters wanted him, but they didn't want Biden's policies. They really didn't. And that's not just me making stuff up. They wanted Bernie's key policies, but they felt Biden would just be better at beating Trump. I don't agree, but that's what the voters thought. But in exit poll after exit poll after exit poll, we saw that a Green New Deal and Medicare for All pulled very, very well among the people voting in those Democratic primaries. So even in states where Biden was beating Bernie, they were still saying, hey, we really like this Medicare for All. We really like this Green New Deal. And of course, in states where Bernie Sanders was winning, those things were off the charts, right? So what that shows me is that Bernie and his wing need to push in these task forces and say, hey, you're the nominee, Joe. People trust you as an individual campaigner. People trust you with your legacy to defeat Donald Trump, but they don't want your political vision. And you're going to have to make significant concessions if you want the support of the left, if you want the support of the majority of people in the Democratic Party from a policy perspective. We're fighting for Medicare for all. We're fighting for a legitimate, full Green New Deal. And in addition to all of this, we're dealing with a crisis right now. If there was any time where you could move Joe Biden off his position, it would be right now. This is not a campaign as usual. This is not normal political times. This is a time where the healthcare model that links your healthcare to your employment status has been absolutely shattered. It was awful before. It's abysmal now with 35, 40 million people losing their jobs. And of course, when you add the fact that, their children and their spouses might also lose healthcare, it's really, you're looking at dozens of millions of people that aren't going to have health care. Now is the exact right time to push within these task forces for Medicare for all. Not Medicare 55 and older, not these, around the edges things, not this, let's get back to Hillary 2016 sort of things. So I am very concerned, guys. I really am. I think it's good to see good progressives on these task forces. I think it's good to see from a political perspective for Biden, I don't support the guy, that he's actually making these moves because I think it's a smart move politically from Biden. But I don't think these task forces are going to result in meaningful changes in the Joe Biden platform. And when it comes to defeating Donald Trump in 2020 in November, I really do feel that unless the Democrats can excite young people, racialized people, infrequent voters, working class people with bold economic justice, with a Green New Deal and with Medicare for all, they're going to lose. And I don't want to see that happen.